Hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Mules Writer Chronicles podcast. I am the Mules Writer, Craig Marlette, and I'm sure glad you came for a visit today as we look back into the past through the microscope of time. With World War II and the Korean War behind us, America was moving at a rapid pace, trying to make up for the years spent fighting tyrants overseas. We were all ready to start living the American dream again and seeing if we'd learned anything from the vast new advances that always come after humans try to kill each other with the latest weapons of war. The bomb turned everyone's attention in the new direction of scientific discovery, and as a young boy I was waking up to the world of atoms, Buddy Holly, and West Side Story. Join me now as I return to that wonderful period in America's history when everything seemed possible, as I peered into the world of atoms with my brand new microscope and wondered if anyone there was looking back at me. So hop up on my mule here and let's get ready for the next story entitled Designer Genes. I've always been intrigued by science. When I was a young boy, I gutted my entire savings account, about $22.41, just to buy a microscope so I could study the miniature world of germs. Truthfully, there was a brief inner battle about cashing out my new passbook savings account, but in the end, that microscope at Woolworths won the day, and my first attempt at being thrifty bit to dust. I haven't been able to save a penny since that day, but I never regretted getting that microscope. I couldn't get excited about the frog guts or those little bottled fish eggs they studied in the school science lab, but germs were cool. You could take anything and lay it on a slide and see all the cool stuff floating around. And if you put a dog hair on the slide, it was really neat.
Look at that thing.
Back then, we were taught that the atom was the smallest thing in the universe, and everything was made up of atoms, with their little nucleus of protons and neutrons, circled by the mighty electrons, miniature Halley's comets going around the center of the atom, like planets around the sun.
The government has not yet issued any statement, but there seems to be no question that there actually is a large, unidentified object circling the Earth at incredible speed.
The study of genetics wasn't popular back then. The only genes we knew about were the ones we got from Sears and Roebuck, the ones we took home and pegged so tight on Mom's sewing machine that the veins in our neck bulged from the reverse blood flow, the results of a newly discovered need to be like James Dean, Elvis, or Sal Mineo. We ran around in gangs with names like the Diggers or Stompers, wearing our peg pants, engineering boots, and T-shirts, with a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes rolled up in one sleeve.
That's right. I'm cool.
We wore black fake leather coats with 2 or 3 shiny star-shaped buttons on each shoulder and big collars that covered our necks and hid the runoff from the globs of bushwhacks incessantly combed into our hair.
Yuck.
The bushwhacks that enabled us to make stiff ducktails in the back and a perfect ski slope in the front.
Oh, that's cool.
A shiny chrome dog chain hung from a belt loop or wadded in the pocket could be pulled quickly in case we had to rumble, which in Kalamazoo, Michigan was a rare occurrence, even in those days. We were cool. We were very cool. The pinball machine was our video game. It wouldn't suck your mind out like Nintendo or PlayStation, but any nickels, dimes, or quarters you had in your pockets were fair game. We were masters of our own universe, a universe filled with Dunkin' Yo-Yos, Pez, Snake Braid, A&W Root Beer, Footlong Chili Dogs, and 45 records. We shot birds with BB guns before there was a Greenpeace to stop us, and we tested science by tying electric wires to a frog's legs and plugging them into the wall socket just to see what would happen next.
Hey, kid, that hurts. You boys were some sick puppies.
The war was over. Anything was possible. Of course, we didn't know then that we were genetically predisposed for things like depression, alcoholism, or drugs, or that if Dad didn't take us fishing every week, we might grow up to be misfits and go out later in life and kill 50 or 60 people.
Good evening, Clarice.
If we did get depressed, we usually got a bad attitude, mouthed off to Mom, got our butts whipped with a leather strap when Dad got home from work, and then snapped back to reality without the need of a psychologist. Every now and then a brother or cousin or kid down the street got sent to juvie to show us that there were limits to our madness. But all in all, we felt like we had it made. Ah, the good old days. What we didn't know then is that we were all part of a huge social experiment. Somewhere in a dark room in Washington, D.C., some professors, politicians, marketing wizards, army generals, Hollywood producers, and yes, a lawyer or two, all got together and decided that they could mold a brave new world using this great new discovery called television.
Good evening. I'm Ed Murrow, and this is...
Advertisements would show us pictures and tell us what we had to have if we were going to be anything in life. Sitcoms made the family into a comedy show, and Saturday cartoons gave us our first low-cost babysitters. Shows like Dragnet or The Untouchables let us know what happened to those who didn't cooperate, while Ted Mack's Amateur Hour took the mystique out of being a star and promised us that even a local farm boy who played the harmonica while tap dancing might be discovered someday and become famous, especially if he drank his Geritol every night before going to bed.
And now, here is your host, Ted Mack.
Let's get things going here. Let's spin the wheel of fortune for the 1,003...
The war was over, but Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow reminded us that missiles could come from Russia at any time and blow us all to smithereens if we weren't careful. So the fallout shelter full of canned beans, water, candles, and gas masks soon became the next great household necessity. TriLevel Houses started popping up in things called housing developments, and soon basements became romper rooms with square linoleum tiles on the floor, and little bars where Dad would sit endlessly with uncles and friends and talk about the war and Edsels and baseball.
Play ball!
If there was one divorcee in the neighborhood, everybody knew it. They didn't do that very often back then. If you were miserable, you just kept it to yourself and worked it out. I guess we were poor, but I didn't really know it until around Thanksgiving or Christmas time when they would hand out the boxes of donated food to the poorest kids in the classroom. I usually got a few cans of cranberries myself.
That was embarrassing.
So we must have been poor. I thought everybody went to the Goodwill when they needed clothes. At least everybody I knew did. My father was a car salesman, so he always had a good car, a big Packard Clipper or Hudson or even an Edsel. On Sundays, we would take a drive out to the country. It didn't matter where. Dad just drove and no one complained. There wasn't a McDonald's on every corner, so we usually ate at home when we got back or maybe took a picnic basket. Sometimes we ended up at my Grandma Marlette's house for dinner, which was great since she made the best cookies and cakes in the world.
Yummy.
Life was simple and somewhat predictable. I may have been poor, but at least I had a microscope. I could go into my room and look at the germs and realize that I wasn't alone. Even though I couldn't see them with the naked eye, there were probably other worlds with little families riding bicycles and going swimming in their little lakes on weekends. There were probably teenage germs and germ Elvis Presleys who sang at sock hops and smoked little germ Lucky Strikes or Kints with the micronite filters. Germ gangs had weekend rumbles, and germ fathers built basement rooms and talked about the great protozoan war, where germ soldiers blew up other germ soldiers, and little germ scientists looked through their microscopes at things they called genes, which they were sure were the building blocks of their vast germ world. I still like science. I just don't think it has all the answers like I used to back then. In spite of all our modern technology and understanding of how the human mind and body work, all things considered, we don't seem to have come that far. We still keep blowing each other up over little differences like color, religion, greed, and such. Cursing has become an art form now, and just about everybody swears, anywhere and any time. Clothes are a little baggier these days, and drugs have made the gangs quite a bit scarier. Parents can't give their kids a whipping now without being threatened by jail time or worse, and there's not much sacred left that hasn't been brought down or made fun of by modern thinkers.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
I am so sure.
Maybe we all need to peg our pants. Maybe if we did that, the blood flow would back up again, and our brains could be rejuvenated before it's too late. We could all sit around singing Buddy Holly songs about sweet love and pretty girls, and watch Gary Moore or Red Skelton, and laugh at something that's funny but not filthy. Somewhere out there, maybe a little germ is praying the same prayer for his world. He's looking through the sacred glass of God his parents have brought him to see. He has reached the age of accountability for young germs, and now he has come to see the great creator of all things in the temple of the great glass. He looks out into the vast expanse stretching before him, and he sees the all-seeing eye looking back at him through the magic glass. He sees the beautiful sky and the bright-colored pictures of other, lesser gods on the wall behind the great creator. He sees for the first time in his life all of the beautiful bright lights and shiny mirrors in the creator's palace. And there, on display in the magnificent hall of slides, are all the germ heroes from his own world. Heroes he's heard about all of his life, great warriors from the protozoan wars, and the scientists who discovered the great glass of God, all now immortalized on glass sheets in the Creator's palace. Ooh. One day, he says to his parents, maybe I will be there on the glass display of great heroes that sits in the Creator's palace. They smile as if to say, you will make us all proud. He sees the sacred black leather jacket with the 3 stars on each shoulder, hanging on display in the Creator's home right next to the jeans of strength and boots of great power, sitting on the table next to the sacred jacket, a symbol of the holy covenant of protection to all who live in the world of germs. He feels a warm glow of comfort now. He knows he is safe and that his life has meaning and purpose. He returns to his home where they will celebrate the sacred rite of belief. He has seen the great Creator through the glass eye of God. Now, what he only once believed in his heart, he knows for certain, having seen for himself. He is comforted in the knowledge that his world is safe. One day he too will bring a son into the world and tell him about the wonderful Creator and the glass eye of God. Well, that's it for today's story. I hope you've enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to reading your comments if you would be kind enough to take the time to write me a short note. And be sure to tell your friends about this podcast if you like what you are hearing, and come back to join me next time for another story from my wild and crazy life. So long.